The Neurology of Humor by Mish Hobson. Functional imaging in a healthy brain when processing humor implicates a distribution of cortical and subcortical networks. General brain regions that are believed to be involved in the detection and appreciation of incongruity and emotion, such as surprise and delight, can be divided into three categories: cortical, limbic, and subcortical. The temporoparietal junction is believed to be responsible for processing humor, as well as socially relevant information in general. The onset of laughter is believed to be initiated by the activation of the insula, the amygdala, and the putamen. The limbic dopaminergic reward networks are also activated during this time. The neurological study of humor could present a model for studying other complex behavioral functions, such as ambiguity and incongruity, mentalizing, and empathy. There is not yet a standard or widely accepted cognitive model for humor processing. Humor development. At the beginning of life, everything seems absurd. Infants and children are constantly discovering the world around them. Things that are found humorous in this stage of life often involve cruelty or bodily functions. Laughing at things of this nature boosts a growing individual's self-assertion. Adolescent years are awkward and stressful due to a huge hormone influx. Humor at this stage of life is often found around subjects that deal with some sort of rebellion or anything that's considered off-limits, such as sex. It's usually used as a tool for protection in order to feel superior at such an insecure time. In adulthood, humor becomes more subtle as the brain's ability to get a joke has developed. Complex social dynamics, wordplay, and things that are considered to be more linguistic or patterned are often found humorous at this stage. Basically, the things that are found funny are directly related to the developmental stresses experienced at each point of life. Males, females, and humor. Multiple studies on neurological processing of humor indicate how the average male and female brain process humor differently. When presented with humorous material, the researchers observed which regions of the brain activated in each sex. In females, the ventral processing system was activated, which are the regions involving the amygdala, the insula, and the anterior cortex. These regions of the brains are linked to emotional perception, indicating that females process humor through limbic reactivity involving the appraisal of its emotional features and appreciation of incongruity. In males, the dorsal processing system was activated in addition to the activation of the ventral processing system. The addition of the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex being activated indicates males process humor through a more evaluative process. Basically, what they found was that females were more likely to process and appreciate humor, where males were more likely to concentrate on replication. These results could correlate to neurological findings regarding sex-related differences in processing language. Types of humor. There are different types of humor and laughter, and depending on the type of joke, a different part of our brain will respond to it. There are puns. Puns are usually attributed to be part of the phonological processing network that's located in the left anterior frontal gyrus. Semantic jokes are usually thought to occur within the posterior temporal lobe. That's usually meant for semantic integration. Then there's one-liners. The king of all one-liners, of course, is Mitch Hedberg. One-liners are supposedly processed through the electrophysiological markers located in the lateralized frontal of the brain. There are different humor theories. The first one I'll talk about is incongruity theory. Incongruity theory states that humor arises when logic and familiarity are replaced by things that don't normally go together. It's when we expect a certain outcome, but then something else happens. Then there's superiority theory. Superiority theory addresses laughter occurring at the misfortune of others. Recognizing others' stupidity and mistakes inflates one's ego, thus resulting in a feeling of superiority. Relief theory addresses laughing when something isn't funny. Laughing at moments of high tension provide relief from pent-up emotion and can also help mediate tense situations. So what is laughter? Laughter is a physiological response that involves involuntary rhythmic vocalizations. Scientist Panskep performed a number of experiments that involved tickling rats and recording their behavior. His conclusions were that basic emotion emerges from ancient brain structures such as the amygdala and the hypothalamus. Gelotology is the physiological study of laughter. The limbic system is essential for all forms of laughter. It controls behaviors that are essential to the survival of all mammals. Humans' large frontal lobe is attributed to more complex emotional and social responses when compared to other animals. The right hemisphere of the cortex is responsible for intellectual analysis, in other words, the ability to get a joke. And the left hemisphere of the cortex is responsible for analyzing the structure of a joke. The difference between our laughter and their laughter, as in other animals, is the idea of humor. There's no solid evidence that any other animal besides humans have jokes, though recent research indicates that it may be possible that rats have their own form of slapstick. Animals that laugh usually are animals that live in social settings that have a pack mentality, like chimps, dogs, and rats. Basically, the addition of jokes and humor is essentially what differentiates our laughter from any other animals. So why do we laugh? Well, just as I mentioned, there are two types of laughter, the kind of laughter that we share with other animals, and then the laughter that's exclusive to us. I'll start with the first, which is being ticklish. There are two types of ticklishness. The first that I'll discuss is kinesmesis. This is the sensation you get when you feel a hair lightly graze your thigh unexpectedly. This reaction is believed to have evolved for the purpose of keeping disease-ridden insects off of us. The other type of tickle is gargalesis. Gargalesis is caused by a deeper pressure applied to certain parts of the body. This form of tickling is believed to have evolved to promote bonding between individuals. For other animals, such as mice, this is how being tickled still functions within our society. But this is actually where we as humans start to branch off. Though it still can be used as a form of bonding, most people who are ticklish will agree that gargalesis is not a sensation that they want to experience. As humans tend to exploit weaknesses found in their enemies, tickling can be found embedded in our history books as a form of torture. A European method of tickle torture was to dip a victim's foot in salt water and force a goat to lick it off. Other historical accounts of the administration of tickle torture include ancient Japanese authority figures and even the Nazis. Ignoring this for now, let's go back to the theories that try to answer the question of why we laugh. Philosopher John Morial believes that first human laughter may have begun as a gesture of shared relief at the passing of danger. Laughter inhibits the fight or flight response, so it may indicate trust in one's companions. Laughter strengthens social bonds. This is why I believe humor has arisen in human society, since contemporary human society is dependent on language. Laughter can be used to manipulate and control, which indicates that humor could have evolved to change the behavior of others in order to control the emotional climate and even to sustain hierarchies. Dominant individuals use more humor than their subordinates. When the boss laughs, everyone else in the office laughs. We don't always laugh when we think something's humorous. This again indicates how laughter is not only a response, but an action in order to manipulate social situations. In a threatening situation, laughter can serve as a means to deflect anger. If the threatening person joins in on the laughter, the risk of confrontation lessens. Laughter can also be used as an empathetic gesture to a person in an embarrassing situation. Laughter as behavioral contagion. In 1962, laughing epidemics broke out in northwestern Tanzania. The initial cases started out with 3 girls. By March 18th, symptoms had spread to 95 of the 159 students. They closed the school, and when they reopened, 57 more students became afflicted. The epidemic spread to the students' home villages, affecting 217 villagers. The epidemic lasted 2.5 years, causing the closure of 14 schools. Some claim that this type of epidemic will only affect impoverished people in stressful conditions. But epidemics like this have been recorded multiple times in varying regions, one example being the Leroy girls a similar epidemic that broke out in New York in 2012. Epidemics like these usually affect girls between the age 12 and 18 and will spread mostly to females. Some speculate that behavioral contagions such as these examples are the cause of mirror neurons, or empathy neurons. Brain imaging experiments using functional magnetic resource imaging have shown that the inferior frontal cortex and superior parietal lobe are active when a person performs an action and when the person sees an action performed. How brain damage affects humor. Damage involving a non-dominant hemisphere degrades the appreciation of humor, particularly in the frontal and anterior temporal lobe. Patients with right hemisphere damage can start to find humor in situations that are supposedly humorless. Infarction of the brain, specifically in pons and medulla oblongata, may cause pathological laughter. Gelastic seizures. This is a type of seizure that involves a sudden burst of energy, usually in the form of laughing or crying. Though the syndrome is associated with the presence of tumors or damage to the hypothalamus, frontal, and temporal lobes, there's no obvious reason for why it occurs. Death from laughter. There have been multiple accounts of people dying from laughter, one famous example being the ancient Greek philosopher Chrysippus, who told a slave to feed a donkey figs and then to give it neat wine to wash it down. Apparently, he then literally laughed himself to death.